Today's video, we have all the latest news and rumors around the NHL. The rumor mill today focusing on teams like Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Toronto, as well as Pittsburgh. Could the Penguins offer sheet Nick Robertson? We're going to discuss that possibility. Plus, we have some other news around the NHL, including Thatcher Demko's injury. Rucker McGroarty spoke to the media for the first time as a Pittsburgh Penguin. We have big news as well regarding a newly signed player in Chicago dealing with a serious injury. Plus, we also have some interesting news out of St. Louis regarding a potential cap-friendly replacement. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, there's lots to talk about today, all kinds of news and some rumors to take a look at. Of course, as you can see, I'm not in my normal recording location. I'm actually on the road at a hotel here. I'll be away for the next couple of days, but we'll still be doing our daily content, of course, like we usually always do. Today's actually the 3-year anniversary of the Jesperi Kotkaniemi offer sheet. So it's not the day that we found out Montreal wasn't matching, but it's the day that we found out that he was offer sheeted and signed. So that was 3 years ago, 2021. That feels like hasn't been that long, but it actually has. 3 years now to the day. Of course, we know that Montreal ended up not matching. They took the compensation and flipped it to the Coyotes for Christian Dvorak. Not sure that move really worked out great, but you know what? The Kotkaniemi offer sheet hasn't worked out great with Carolina. I mean, he signed for an abundant amount of money, and then they agreed to lesser money on a longer-term deal, and it still hasn't worked out. And to this day, that's still an unfavorable contract. He's played a lot in the bottom six. It just has not materialized. So unfortunately for Kotkaniemi, I really don't know that he's really going to prove his worth here, but I'd like to know what everybody thinks 3 years later. Did Carolina make the right move? I think a lot of people probably say no. Did Montreal make the right move by letting him go, taking the compensation? Ultimately, I think Montreal might have been able to find a better move to replace him and to use that compensation towards something else, because the Dvorak move has not worked out, although at the time, I know myself included, thought it was a decent move. It seemed reasonable, but hasn't worked out. So 3 years later, I'd like to know what everybody thinks after all this time of being able to analyze how it worked out in the end. NHL veteran Austin Watson, and of course Michigan native, is going to Red Wings camp on a PTO. Of course, Watson played last year with Tampa. Before that, spent 2 or 3 years with the Ottawa Senators. Of course, before that was Nashville, where he first started. I know when Austin Watson left Ottawa last year, he was looking for a multi-year deal, which is why he wouldn't get a new deal with the Senators. They were interested in maybe 1 year, but that was it. Didn't get a multi-year deal anywhere. Got 1 year in Tampa. And now here we are. So I do wonder if Watson's going to be able to prolong his career, but he'll get a chance to do so with his hometown team, with the Detroit Red Wings. Newly signed goalie in Chicago, Laurent Broissoit, already running into injury issues, and the season hasn't even started yet. I'm not sure if this was something that was at the end of the year and maybe he was rehabbing, but is going to require surgery here for a torn meniscus. It's going to be about 5 to 7 week recovery. Thankfully, it's not like a major long-term deal. But in the case of Broissoit, I know sometimes with a meniscus tear, depending on the severity of it, sometimes they just recommend rest and rehab. Like, you don't always need surgery. And I wonder maybe if it was already present at the end of the year, maybe he wasn't just didn't get the recovery that he was hoping for. Now they're going the surgical route. I don't know. Or was it an off-season, like a training injury? I'm not really sure on that front. But either way, he did require surgery, 5 to 7 weeks, which means at this point he's going to miss training camp. It also would mean that he likely misses the beginning of the season. I mean, at this point, looking at where their first game of the season is and everything, it's likely, because I think that's about 6 weeks or so. So he likely misses the first few games of the year as well if everything goes well with his recovery. So that's certainly not the start he was hoping for with his new team in Chicago. So, I mean, Chicago's not expected to be a contender this year. They're still very much rebuilding, so it's really not going to have a huge impact. But Broissoit has had a lot of injuries the last few years, so that's certainly not good for the wear and tear on his body, that's for sure. Wrecker McGroarty, of course, the newly acquired Pittsburgh Penguin, former first-round pick of the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, we've seen a pretty substantial prospect trade involving those two franchises not long ago, sending former first-rounder Braden Yager from Pittsburgh to Winnipeg for McGroarty, and he spoke to the media for the first time in Pittsburgh today. A couple of things that stuck out to me. One, he seems like a very confident kid, no big surprise. When we've heard him speak before, he come across as very, very confident. Sometimes high levels of confidence can come across and rub people the wrong way. Sometimes it comes across as cocky. Didn't really get that impression in the clips today of him talking to the media, but I know from his time in Winnipeg and this whole ordeal about not wanting to sign and everything, it kind of made him look like he was a entitled kid who wanted everything on the first day and didn't want to have to work for it. And I know it's kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And to some degree, I think his comments to me confirms that's definitely the case. I mean, we know that nobody's come out and really confirmed 100%, with Winnipeg what the issue was. There's been lots of rumors, but he or the Jets didn't really come out explicitly and say. But one of the comments from McGroarty today that stuck out to me was he says that I feel like everything is right here. Of course, this is when he was asked about not signing to Winnipeg and getting traded to Pittsburgh and everything. I feel like everything's right here. The development path, the veteran guys they have here, the organization they have here, and talking to Kyle and Jason, meaning Dubas and Spezza, I feel like they're just two great hockey minds with a great development path for me. So he emphasized development path twice in that answer. So clearly, development path to me means that they've outlined him to getting to the NHL quickly, which is in Winnipeg, they were less, non-committal on that. They thought they had a deep roster, weren't 100% sure he would crack the roster right away, thought he might need to spend a little bit of time in the minors, and that was not what he wanted to do according to all the reports out there. So we'll see. Either way, I do think it's fair to say now that we can confirm that that was the issue. It's not just speculation based on this comment. I mean, he didn't explicitly come out and say they wouldn't guarantee me NHL time, but just the choice of his words, which were carefully calculated, I think it's fair to say that that was part of the issue here. But he definitely loves being a Penguin. There's no doubt about that. You could tell he was excited, very confident, and just really was happy to be there. So I think over time, Pittsburgh will really, fans will really like this kid. He's a hard worker. He has shown leadership skills at lower levels, and he definitely has some skill and will play hard and not afraid to do like the dirty work. So I think over time he'll become a fan favorite. It's just, and I understand why Winnipeg's perspective, why they see him as kind of having a sense of entitlement. But hopefully over time he can shed that from his reputation and just show that he's a hardworking, skilled player who can be successful. We'll see. The St. Louis Blues made a very unexpected yet fun announcement today that I would hope that other NHL teams will look at and follow suit. The St. Louis Blues today announced what they're calling Blues Friendly. They had a social media post saying, even though Cap Friendly is no more, of course, as a content creator for the NHL and certainly as a fan, and I know majority of people watching my content and hockey content in general, we all loved Cap Friendly. It was a huge resource. You wanted to know how much a player was making, or if they had what the conditions were under contract. No trade clauses, no move clauses. Signing bonus money. How the contracts were broken down. It was just such an awesome resource. You could take a look at to find out about players, and you could kind of help. When you're looking at. When you hear speculation about who might get traded, okay, all right, well, who has the cap space to do this move? It was a heavily relied upon resource. I used it a lot, every single day. It was very sad to see them go. I understand them getting bought out by the Washington Capitals and even been given opportunities within the Capitals organization. So I understand it. It's a business move. They had to take the deal. But thankfully, it's other resources like Puckpedia, and I think it's Cap Wages and a few others have come along. I mean, Puckpedia was already there, but certainly expanded and improved their site a lot more since the Cap Friendly announcement came along. But I honestly think that Gary Bettman, the NHL, all the owners, and all the teams, they need to embrace the fact that fans want to know this stuff. And the St. Louis Blues are going to be an innovator here. So they launched, like I said, what they call Blues Friendly. It's an app that you can download for the St. Louis Blues, and it gives you all the contract details, the player statuses, the terms of their deals, trade clauses, all that stuff. Essentially, it's like a smaller version of Cap Friendly for the St. Louis Blues. Like, why not make all this public? To be honest, a lot of, like, if you look through the NHL Players Association, the PA site, all the salaries are listed there. A lot of teams now, I notice when they're announcing contract signings, in the press release, they're being more forthcoming with what the amounts are, what they're getting paid. A lot of times before, you would see a press release saying, X team has agreed to this player on terms of whatever contract, as per team policy. No other details are released. Like, that was quite common, and to some degree, I think still is. But I noticed that in more press releases, you're seeing more and more teams kind of embrace the idea of just being more forthcoming. We sign them for this number of years at this much money. They don't always give all the fine details for like how the contract's broken down, how it's structured, the trade clauses, all that stuff. But to me, it's a terrific thing, and I would hope over time that all other teams would eventually join the Blues here on this thing and make it a league-wide initiative to give the fans the data. Clearly, there's a major need for it. A lot of fans want access to this stuff. It's fun, it's educational, and it just really is a great resource overall, no matter if you just want to know this stuff or if you're researching for making videos or writing or any of that stuff. It's a terrific thing. So I really hope other teams see this and follow suit. So good on you, St. Louis. I applaud you for your efforts in your innovation here. And like I said, hopefully the rest of the league takes notice. In the rumor mill, I want to start with Vancouver. Part of this is not rumor, part of it is, but lots of rumors about how they're going to handle the goaltending situation. More details on the Demko injury, which has kind of gotten a lot more people raising their eyebrows and concerns, especially after the comments from NHL insider Frank Seravalli recently. His words were essentially that this is, based on what he was told from doctors, is that it's like a once in 50 year type of injury. Doctors were saying, told him that you could practice for 50 years as a doctor and only see this injury like once. He couldn't really elaborate or really go into fine detail exactly what it is, except that it's something to do with the back of his knee. And whatever it was, it's obviously still lingering all this time later. It was a fluke injury that happened, of course, in the very early in the playoffs. We know that he was skating, and there was a lot of speculation that if the Canucks would have gotten past the Oilers and made it to the next round, that he might have played. Now, I know they were saying that at the time. I honestly wonder if that probably wouldn't have happened. I mean, if he's all these months later not ready and has not skated and is not ready to go to camp, how could he have played? Would it have been a case where he was, maybe going against his better judgment because of the stakes, in the big time, games? Maybe. And we've seen players do some crazy things, even though might not be advisable long term. But I do wonder, even though there's only been a little bit of information given out saying that he's unlikely to participate in training camp, he's probably not going to play any preseason games, but they're hopeful for him to start the year. I don't know. To me, this smells like a much more serious scenario than what they're letting on. And I don't know how you can miss the entire camp, not play any preseason games, but yet be ready on regular season day one. That, to me, does not make any sense. So we've heard rumblings that they're in the goalie market trying to find some insurance here. Obviously, their cap situation will dictate what they can do. If Demko, if they somehow determine that he needs a surgery, he's going to be out long term, but they have obviously LTIR relief there. But like what Seravalli was saying is the fact that it's still lingering all this time later, he wonders, is there really anything they can do? Or is this just a weird fluke injury that just needs time? If it is, how much time does he need? And it might be difficult to pinpoint the timeline. So it's just a really weird scenario. And I think after hearing all this and what we've heard from Rick Dollywall and Elliot Friedman and everybody else in the past 2, 3, 4 days, I just wonder if I think this is worse than anybody's letting on. Seravalli is one of those guys that's not afraid to kind of put it out there whereas some other guys kind of tiptoe around it and don't want to make it sound worse than what it is and create a little bit of fan hysteria. But we've heard about Kevin Lankinen, who's a UFA, maybe being a target for the Canucks, and that's still a possibility. I've seen some suggestions today that maybe they need to get somebody who's more accustomed to being a starter. Lankinen's pretty well been a career backup. I know there was a time in Chicago where he kind of was a starter there for a bit. And he's played decently in Nashville the past couple of years, but UC Saros carries a big workload as well. Shelovs is not used to having a huge workload. Like Demko, probably, it's fair to say in the last few years, Demko has been overused. And I do think whenever he gets the knee sorted and does get back, they really need to watch his playing time and make sure that he's not running to the ground, because this guy is going to end up with a really short career if they're not careful, in my opinion. He's dealt with some pretty serious stuff so far, and he's still a young man. All that said, I've seen some suggestions today about trading for some other goalies around the league. There's obviously some that have more of a starting goalie experience that might be able to be had for not too bad of a price. I've seen Detroit be mentioned as a target where they have more than enough goaltenders in that organization, either Alex Lyon or Ville Husso. I don't know that I know Alex Lyon is a lot easier to work with from a cap perspective. He's got a great contract. It would be a great pickup if they could pull it off, but I don't know that Detroit's going to want to move him. I think they'd probably prefer to move Husso, and I don't know that Vancouver would want to go there. But I mean, guys like that in Detroit that have multiple starting goalies that have the experience would be a team to look to. I mean, there's a few other teams out there that have enough depth that they could look to do it. I don't know what Vancouver does here. I honestly think they need somebody who's strong enough as a starter, but yet not too expensive, and somebody who can just kind of hold on the fort. Alex Lyon would be perfect in a lot of ways. I just don't know that Yzerman's going to want to trade him, because I think they still kind of see him as being their main goalie for right now, too. So we'll see. But Vancouver's got a big decision to make, and there's no doubt about that. In Toronto, Nick Robertson, could he be an offer sheet candidate? We've seen another, of course, couple successful offer sheets. We talked about the Kotkaniemi anniversary here today, and of course, then we saw the two offer sheets from the St. Louis Blues to the Oilers that were successful. So they're now 3 out of the last 3 working out. Would Kyle Dubas go after, his old prospect there in Toronto and Robertson and bring him to Pittsburgh? Some speculation from Pittsburgh Hockey Now in Dan Kinjerski that if they offer sheet at Robertson and say the 2.29, same sort of deal you saw with Dylan Holloway, which would only require a third-round pick for compensation, that his sources are telling him he thinks that Brad Treliving and the Leafs would match and try to seek a better trade. I don't know that they would. I mean, this guy probably can't realistically demand a salary of more than $1 million, if not less than that. And if you're going to give him double that, and the Leafs with a tight cap situation, in fact, knowing he doesn't want to play there, I don't really know that they would. But he feels that, according to his sources, they're telling him that they think Leafs management would match. But ultimately, it's a case where Dubas knows the player, seen him play a lot, was involved with the organization when he was drafted and, developing, coming up the ranks. And if he feels like he could help Pittsburgh could, theoretically squeeze him in here. It wouldn't be that difficult. They also suggest that to make it more likely to be successful, maybe they could offer a side trade like we saw with Edmonton, St. Louis. They're like, well, as a way of, enticing you to not match, we'll send you something for future consideration. So maybe they take newly acquired Cody Glass and they flip him to Toronto for futures and then offer sheet Robertson and give up a third. So that was the suggestion. Could Robertson be more of an upgrade and a better fit in Pittsburgh than Glass is the question. I don't know. I mean, looking at all the acquisitions in the roster for Pittsburgh, moving a player out like that would create more of an opportunity for a guy like Robertson, but difficult to say if that's the right move or not. I mean, over time here, Robertson's probably hoping for an offer sheet. It might help get his situation settled, because as it stands right now, the Leafs don't seem to be in any hurry, and they're rumored to be obviously searching for left wing help, and obviously that's what he plays, and I don't know. It's hard to say. That could be, if nothing like that happens, then he could end up for an extended time waiting to get it figured out. So we'll see. But let me know your thoughts on the possibility of Robertson getting an offer sheet. And then lastly, in Winnipeg, Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press, had an article here recently looking at the future of Nikolai Ehlers. Now, Ehlers was a player early in the offseason that had a lot of talk around him, and based on his own end-of-season comments and everything, it sure sounded like he wanted out of Winnipeg. He's got 1 year left on his contract. Didn't seem real interested in extending. Didn't explicitly say I want out when he talked to the media, but kind of sounded a lot like it. We also heard similar tone from Mark Scheifele that he signed a 7-year extension. So I'll caution you on that. And of course, we know how patient Cheveldayoff is. And of course, they have a new head coach in Scott Arniel. I think Ehlers was also not thrilled with Rick Bowness. I know he was moved around a lot. And it seemed like when things didn't go well, or if they were struggling or needed a shake-up, he was always the guy that moved. And I don't think he was thrilled to continue under that. Of course, Arniel, obviously very much similar. He worked under Bowness. He ran that team for a while when he was away last year. I don't know if you're really going to see a whole lot of different philosophy or changes. So I think if you're Ehlers, you're probably still wondering if you want to be there. As far as we know, and according to McIntyre's article, They can't confirm that he's changed his mind at all, but he has the feeling that if the team and the player have a good start to the season, that he feels that Ehlers might be more likely to consider an extension. But if that doesn't happen, that an in-season move might be something that's more likely if he doesn't seem to want to change his mind. But if he talks to the team and they are so confident he's not going to re-sign, a move makes sense, right? Because you don't want to lose him for nothing. And he would have good value. He's been a good player. He's a good skater. Production's been a little bit up and down, but also I think the way he's been used is also kind of goes hand in hand together as well. So Ehlers is still one of those names that's been out there a lot. We haven't heard about much recently, but still very much, as far as we know, a possibility to be moved. But it's going to probably be start the season, see where things are at. I think they'll try to figure things out. Of course, the Cole Perfetti extension that's not done yet as well could have an impact on things, depending on how long and how much money they offer him will obviously impact what they can offer to other players like Ehlers on an extension, and that could obviously sway his decision here as well. So let me know your thoughts on the future of Ehlers as well as Robertson and Canucks goaltending and everything else discussed here today. Down in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.